New day, uh, new lecture. Try to keep this within our normal limits. May try to break this thing up into two or three because this is really something maybe you haven't ever considered. Some of you may have, but let's get on with it and see what you think. What we're talking about is existentialism. Um, a very popular thing throughout the history of mankind, I suppose, off and on, not consistently something that's a major thrust of importance, but it comes and goes. When it's here, when it's in the consciousness of humanity, then it really gets played up. The last time that it was very popular to consider existentialistic things was in the 60s, my teenage years, the hippies. Um, and basically, it's a question, existentialistic thinking. You're an existentialist. You study existentialism. What is all that exit stuff? Well, its root word is exist. And basically the question is why do we exist? What's the significance of existence? So we ask these philosophical questions. What is the meaning of existence? What is our goal? Or strike that. What is our purpose of being in existence? Why do we live? Why do we die? What do we do while we're living? Um, and there's some basics even beyond that. Um, Respect for the person, respect for exploration of human behavior, uh, understanding other people. I remember that in the 60s, there was an effort made to give people, quote, room within reason. You do, there was a saying, you do your thing and I'll do my thing, meant in a positive way, not meant in a negative way. And it was supposedly this big love thing that not this negative connotation of free love. You all know what that would include, but loving everybody. It was an unrealistic pursuit, but it was attempted nonetheless. Didn't It fell way short of the intent. Uh, we know the religious, the Christian idea behind loving everyone. That's a different story. That's not this existentialistic kind of a view of things, which doesn't always include quote religion. It includes an understanding that there may be a religious aspect to it, but that's not the major thrust. The major thrust is humanity. So that's what existentialistic thinking is. And um, there's an attempt to uh, balance limitations. The the existentialistic approach to thinking means that we address opportunities um, that present themselves, but we also recognize limitations. So you have kind of both sides of the coin here. Uh, Now, why is it important to understand this? Because there is a type therapy called existentialistic therapy. And what is that all about? Existentialistic therapy. Uh, it's a desire, it grew out of a desire to help people um, really, I almost said attack. I don't think that's a good word. Confront dilemmas. personal dilemmas. The current focus of existentialistic approach is you're uh, being alone in the world and suffering an anxiety based on what you perceive as an isolation. You work against this feeling of being isolated. The human nature dictates that we seek out, or basically animal instinct seek that like seeks out like. Kittens are born, they don't go looking for a coyote. They're born looking for their mom. Other cats seek out other cats. Just picking something out of the air here. Um, you pick the animal or whatever you want, including a human being. What do we do as human beings? Do we go want to have a relationship with a tree? No. We want to have relationships, or at least um, companionship, not in the necessarily in the beginning of a love relationship, but we want to have a relationship with other human beings. We want to not be isolated. We want to be a part of something. So the idea is that existentialistic therapy, existential therapy, is a therapy that addresses that need. There's a recognition that there's a significance in our existence of your existence never being fixed once and for all. In other words, you never come to a point where everything's final. We are continually trying to maybe even reinvent, recreate ourselves through different avenues, college education, uh, so on and so forth. Any activity or anything you get interested in that would help you become maybe something that you aren't at the moment. You'd have to view that from your own personal standpoint. The idea is that human beings are in a constant state of transition. Now, see if this applies to you. Constant state of transition, a constant state of emergence. We're always evolving. We react to tensions. We react to contradictions and conflicts in our lives. We discover and rediscover the sense of existence. It's not something that's so philosophically out there like in the 60s per se, but realistically, what are we what is our mission? Or at the moment, most people don't look down the road. Most people are living in the here and now. So what are we doing? In essence, we're making sense out of our existence. Human beings question themselves. They question others. They question the world. If you're not doing that, you're probably not thinking. Philosophers have basically assigned labels to this, and it applies even now. Who am I? What can I know? What ought I to do? What can I hope for? Where am I going? I'm sure you ask these questions of yourself all the time. There's some basic dimensions that we call dimensions of the human condition. And this is based on existentialistic approaches to our perception of what life is. And I'll give you some of these. Actually, there's 6 of them. I'll give you all of them. The capacity, number 1, of self-awareness. We're all self-aware. We understand that we exist. That's basic. Everybody knows that. If you don't know that you exist, then you probably are mentally in a place where you need some help. So the capacity to be able to do that, self-awareness, that's physical and mental, by the way. So I know these things about me and who I am. Number two is freedom and responsibility. The human desire is to be free everywhere. Nobody on this planet that's, boy, this is a dangerous statement. I'm going to say it. Normal, you can decide if it's acceptable to say that or not. No normal person, and definition, well, I'm not going to get into all this philosophy about what is normal. Everybody knows what normal is. It's acceptable behavior in a particular culture. So, freedom. People want to be free. People don't commonly care too much for rules within reason. There's a thing that Lawrence Kohlberg termed called social contract. Social contract means basically that I'm going to behave and obey the rules because I want you to do the same thing, which brings some compatibility and some calmness to this thing we call life. And then there's another aspect to all that. It's called responsibility. So there's your social contract. Responsibility, freedom to be and do as long as it's not harmful. If you're not, quote, normal, and you don't mind harming other people, then we have places called prisons for you. And you may wind up there. So freedom and responsibility, reasonable freedom, reasonable responsibility. Number three is creating your own identity. And this is two parts, creating your own identity, but also establishing meaningful relationships with other people. So again, go back to what I said a moment ago. We seek out like. We want to seek out those like us, meaning not somebody that shares your viewpoints, etc., meaning other human beings, period. So we seek likeness in that sense. Creating your own identity. Well, I'll tell you what, that's a toughie. Eric Erickson addresses that in his psychosocial theory, where you spend the first 3 or 4, 5, 6 years of your life, 7 years of your life, maybe even longer than that, establishing an identity. By the time you're adolescent, you should have an identity, according to him, and according to many psychologists. Because if you don't, there's no calmness, there's no peacefulness in your life because you don't know who you are. You obviously you know your name, but you really don't know what the ingredients of who you are. So I need to establish that in my, probably from the time I'm born up to somewhere around 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. By the time you're 13, 14 years old, you need to have some sort of an identity established, understanding what you can do, understanding what you can't do, limitations, abilities, that sort of thing. And part of that is an establishment of meaningful relationships with other people. Because if you are comfortable with who you are, you don't mind being intimate, as in friends, with someone else. If you have role confusion, in other words, I don't really know who I am, where I'm headed, etc., then what's that going to do to your relationships? They're not going to be very deep. People try to imitate other people sometimes. They try to adopt their identity because they like this person's behaviors, and you want to be like that. You emulate it, and then you see those people having success in relationships. You try it, but is that really you? So identity is a tough one. Here's a biggie, number 4. Search for meaning, purpose, values, and goals. Wow. Abraham Maslow comes to mind in his hierarchy of needs. We search for meaning and purpose, values, and goals every day. It doesn't matter what it involves. You have goals. You have these lofty goals, a degree, a really good job, etc. But they're minor goals. Getting through this psychology class, or or whatever the case is. That sounds like a major goal, but it really, as it involves the whole big wide world, it's kind of in the middle, I suppose. Maybe you need this degree to do something, of course, which is obviously the norm, but it's not life ending. But these meaning, purpose, and values, what is that all about? That's how you view the world. That's your perception of the world. What's the meaning of all this around me? How do I fit into that? And here again, existentialistic thinking. What's my purpose? What is my purpose as a human being on this planet? Values are established for you in the beginning. You're taught your value system from whoever it is that's your primary caregiver. That's not always your parents, by the way. It could be your grandparents, aunt and uncle, whoever you are primarily engaged with in formative years. That's what we call your caregiver. We don't necessarily in psychology or counseling want to, which is all the same. We don't want to be explicit in terms of who's taking care of you until we look at the effects of it. So your value system is one of the products of those relationships. Who taught you to love? Who taught you to hate? What is it they taught you to love? What is it they taught you to hate, etc. The fifth one's troublesome. Anxiety as a condition of living. If you're never anxious, then it's probably when you're asleep. There are things that cause anxiety. I'm not talking about the disorder. What I'm talking about is anxiety in simple day-to-day activities. Driving to work, for example, driving to campus if you live off campus. I'm just picking that because I drive a lot. So anxiety producing, not crippling anxiety, but an anxiousness about the traffic conditions. That makes sense? Or you can even go further than that with things a little more important, like my financial condition. Do I have enough money to live on after I pay tuition? All these things that can cause anxiety. That's a condition of living. You're not going to escape it. I don't want to be negative, but prepare yourself because you're going to suffer through some minor anxiety all your life. Not crippling anxiety. That means that you need to go to see a counselor or a psychotherapist. But anxiety is a condition of living. And number 6, an awareness of death and non-being. Probably heavily involved in anxiety producing. Some people fear death. Many people do because you don't know what's around the corner. We don't like not knowing the future. We don't like the unknown as human beings. People go to extreme measures to try to find out what the future holds. Well, I got news for you. Nobody can do that. There's another way of saying death, or there's something in relationship to death. It's called non-being. We can't understand as human beings what it means to be a non-being. What does that mean? Non-being means you're not here anymore. What is after this? What am I after this? After I die, what do I become? Depends on what your belief system is. If you have a Christian belief system, a religious belief system, then you have answers for that. But do you really understand it? And the answer to that is no. Nobody really does. I don't care what books you read. We really can't grasp that kind of an understanding about not being a human being anymore. We will be, according to whatever belief system you aspire to, in our case, being a Christian university, it's very obvious. We become spirit. We don't have physical bodies anymore. We have spiritual bodies after death. So an awareness of all of that. These are the 6 biggies that that the existentialistic approach to living include. These, well, they're dimensions because they They cover a lot of territory. Each and every one of the six do. Um, so the application of this into counseling, what's the big deal? Well, the application is that if you're using an existentialistic approach, then you are basically applying this understanding that there is a question of existence. It's that basic. And then you address the person's difficulties from that standpoint. Existentialistic therapy has a lot of detractors. You'll see that in your text. So I'm not going to really spend a lot of time at all on how what the detractors of it say. I will say that some think it's unrealistic, but that's true in just about all therapies. There are always detractors of any therapy, even the most popular, which is CBT. Excuse me, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. There are people that say it doesn't work. Well, apparently it does because it's the most popular. So that's it for this little lecturette. Um, I hope you get to watch it early in the week. It's being posted today, and please watch it. Gain from it. It's an interesting area of humanity. See ya.